keeping it up. All right, let's move this over.
It's a good song, though.
Yeah, I write too many songs for this show. I'm like already having too much fun writing songs.
I love you like whip those up too.
I don't know.
The
I think it's really
rhyme
fun.
is all like correct.
Words rhyme with other words.
Yeah,
It's something I'm trying.
it's a
I'm
good.
basically Macklemore.
Oh wow, is that your aspirational?
Well, I'm not very good, so I don't want to set the bar too high.
That's good. Macklemore level.
Watching movies is fun, but why only watch one when you could watch two and hear us talk them through? We'll pick a pair of flicks on similar topics, then we'll tell you our analyses. Let's watch two movies.
Hello and welcome. This is Let's Watch Two Movies. I'm your host, Juliet Bowser.
That's not your name.
It's not anyone's
It's like a
name.
very specific name.
Right?
That's not
It just came
yours.
to me. Maybe Julia is like a part of me.
Maybe. I thought it was going to be a reference to Twilight, and
nothing.
it wasn't.
Was a reference to anything?
Okay,
Is your mic all set?
Yeah, I mean, it's on. It's going.
Oh, look
Hello.
at us go. Hello.
Look at us.
Look at us podcast together.
Okay, so I'm Maddy.
I'm Mary Ellen. I'm not Juliet Bowser.
I don't know who that is.
I don't either. I hope I meet her someday. She sounds nice.
Cool. So we're starting up another duo of movies.
Yes. Oh, yeah. This is our second Let's Watch. Well, it's our third episode. Second two
Lot
movies.
of numbers.
I don't want to throw too many numbers at you guys. We'll take care of the math. You take care of enjoying the podcast.
Yep. That's a great way to think about it because we are going to take care of the math.
Mm-hmm.
So we are about to watch another two movies. We already watched one,
Yes.
which is Twilight,
Yes.
and everyone but us has again already reviewed and discussed this movie a lot.
Years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this came out in 2008, which was like going back in a time machine for me.
I was still a teenager when this
Yeah.
came out. That's crazy. I was 18. Depending on what time of the year it came out.
Yeah, I guess I was 20 or 21 possibly. Yeah, I don't know, depending. 'Cause
Yeah.
we're 3 years apart. It's important that the listeners know that.
Well, I want to like set the scene for them. Like Twilight's
Set
come
the
out.
scene.
What was Mary Ellen doing? What was she?
Maddie's a senior in college.
Mary Ellen
is a freshman in,
Yeah.
or maybe not. I don't
No,
know.
I was a
Okay.
freshman at 17.
Okay.
Isn't that kooky? Guys, that's why I'm so smart.
Kooky. So yeah, I was still a huge nerd. I didn't watch this movie right away, but I did read all of the Twilight books roughly around this time period. This was around when I first started working at the Boston Phoenix, which was my first
damn.
job right out of college.
I didn't know that.
And I interned
I mean, I know
there.
you worked there. I didn't know it was your first job out of college.
It was, and I interned there for a year and a half beforehand. So I was like working at the Phoenix, and that's associated with Twilight for me because I also remember overhearing my new coworkers talking about Twilight with one another and being like, what's up with this movie?
Oh, so it wasn't like, you gotta see this movie.
No.
Okay.
They were like, what is up with these books? What's up with this fandom? They didn't know the word fandom yet because it was 2008.
Sure.
And I would have been the person who taught them that word. And I was like, I'm like very new here. I'm gonna like butt into this coworker conversation and like talk to them about how I know about the Twilight fandom. Because I did. I like had friends who were into it. I was not personally into it, but I was the person who was like, let me break this down for you guys. Twilight fans. I had some friends who were Mormons who were into it.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of cosplayers, girl cosplayers who were into Twilight.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and like
That checks out.
I was going to a lot of cons at that age. And I like knew a lot of girls who were like into fan fiction. So I was like ensconced in these communities that no one else at the Phoenix was. So I was like, let me like explain to you guys what's going on here.
Right.
And then I accidentally bought myself into having to cover Twilight for work for the next
Because you were the most well-researched on it.
years. They were like, great, you know about this fucking weird thing.
Yeah.
Now you have to cover it. And so I had to do that.
So you and Twilight like have a past.
Yeah. Except I only read the books because I wanted to argue with people I knew about them. Like
Yeah.
people I knew in real life.
So you didn't go into them like, I'm interested.
No, because I was an asshole.
I mean, yeah.
So I read them because I was like, this seems stupid.
Right. Who isn't an asshole at that age?
I was
though?
definitely a huge dick, though. Like, I wasn't a feminist when I started working there. I wasn't.
No.
I kind of did, though. I was like very into gaming. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, these books are stupid, and they're gonna be stupid, and I'm gonna make fun of them. That was the lens through which I was viewing them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when I was 18, and when I was a teenager, when these books, like even before the movie, when the books came out and everything. So you were younger than me.
So for you, it was even more of
I can't remember like knowing anybody who was really into them. Like I know, like I wasn't close with anyone who's into them. I know I saw them as a thing.
So I had to kind of like navigate that in my real life.
But I was still in an age where anything really femme, I immediately trashed because like I knew I wasn't very good at being like very overtly femme, and so I was still at an age where like I was like, that's stupid. I'm not interested in that. I'm intellectual, like all that bullshit, which I've come to terms with and have like worked out. But I approached Twilight like in that same vein. Yeah. Where I'm like, oh, stupid vampire romance, lame. Whereas now if somebody like pitched me, you know, like, hey, there's this like great new book and it's about a vampire romance I'm like, maybe. Yeah. Could work. I'll check it out because I'm into like campy, cheesy romance stuff. If people fall in love, I'll probably be into it.
Sure.
I mean, if it's good.
I mean, I think there are examples of vampire romances that are interesting. I
don't know a ton of I guess I've seen Buffy.
I was gonna say I think the comparison that a lot of people
Angel
made
sucks though. Can we just agree? Angel sucks.
Yeah, like
this has become a Buffy podcast.
Angel the show or Angel the character?
I've never seen Angel the show. Angel the character.
The show's pretty good. Actually,
I've never seen the show.
It's got ups and downs. So I there's definitely parts of it that suck. So I was like, I'm kind of with you if you think that, but there's parts of it that are interesting. Angel the character does suck for sure, especially on Buffy, like his portrayal there. But I think that Buffy's interesting because she's equally strong to Angel. That's how that relationship is set up.
It's not like damsel in distress falls in love with vampire.
Like literally strong, like just a literal physically they're physical equals.
She is technically a superhuman being as well.
She's basically like a superhero.
So it's not like a Bella Edward thing. No, it's different. The dynamic is immediately
version
different.
Of the story, the power differential is part of the fetishization of Edward. That's
part of the
big
fantasy.
Part of the story.
Yeah.
But that's such a core difference that I feel like this is like sounds like we're working up to a defense of Twilight because we came in hating it and like that's not what's gonna happen. But I will say that like I do think it's unfair when I hear people saying, well, Buffy's the good example of how to do this.
Because I don't necessarily think Buffy did everything right.
It didn't. And also I feel like it's a very reductive way of like portraying a quote unquote empowered female character.
Yes.
And I feel like setting Buffy and Bella side by side is like a thing that was happening a lot in the late 2000s.
Right. It's like the same thing as like the Sansa Arya sort of comparisons and stuff. It's like if you
one of these characters has masculine trappings and has a sword, and the other one is feminine and wears dresses, and that's bad.
Right.
Like, okay.
She's not an empowered female character because she doesn't act like a man. Like,
whatever.
Okay.
Sansa rules. Sansa forever.
I fell off the Game of Thrones thing.
Well, Sansa's the best. And if you ever meet a guy who really hates Sansa, that's a red flag, ladies. Just saying.
Should I start with that on first dates? Hi, it's nice to meet you, Timothy. So like, what are your thoughts on Sansa?
Like, you're kidding, but honestly, that can reveal a lot a guy.
Do you like my first date voice?
I do. Do you do that voice the whole date?
Yeah, and then the second date, I'm like, listen up.
I'm Arya Stark now. I have two settings. Because you know what? Madonna whore, like duality of womanhood. Yes. It's all real guys.
That's what I try to embody when I meet new people. I want to really freak them out. Yeah. And then if they can survive that, then we're good.
Yeah.
Those first 2 dates.
Great. Let's go on 2 dates is the name of this podcast.
Oh God,
never. Not.
Oh man.
Let's not talk about dating.
That would be an incredible podcast.
We have to talk about dating because that's what Twilight is entirely about.
And
I was like, let's change the topic away from romance.
It's about like being a teenage girl and teenage girl ideas of romance and like fantasies and gender dynamics. Even
though Stephanie Meyer, who wrote the Twilight book, claims to not have any familiarity with vampire stories, I feel like Twilight is...
It's got all the tropes.
It has all the shit that you want a vampire story to have.
Right.
Like these are... I'm like already fighting against all the criticisms that I've heard about Twilight before we even get to the plot.
I will say like I've seen the Twilight movie before And I haven't read any of the... I've seen all the Twilight movies before.
Yeah, so this is the difference between us.
Yeah.
I have read all the Twilight books, and I've only seen the first 2 movies.
Whereas I've read none of the Twilight books.
But you've seen all the movies.
I've seen all the movies,
and I
but
haven't.
I saw all the movies with riff tracks.
Which is really the only way to go on this
Right,
one.
which
I'm like skipping ahead to the recommendation section, but like I don't recommend this movie by itself because it's tough. But we can get to that later.
Which, if people don't know riff tracks, it's Mystery Science Theater 3000. Those dudes.
Yeah, it's like a commentary track with jokes.
Right, and so I've watched these movies with a bunch of middle-aged men making jokes about it as I go, and so obviously like that colored my perception and experience of it. So I tried to go, and like I'm now 27. I tried to go into it this time, I will admit, actively trying to find things I like, trying to find merit in it.
Me too.
Because and we're going to talk about this, but I feel like stuff that teenage girls are really into and stuff that becomes popular with these crowds are super underestimated by like, you know, the whole Hollywood industry.
And like automatically thrown under the bus by like society at large.
Exactly. And seen as like, like worthless trash. Whereas,
or like dangerous or like, why do girls
what is it doing
like
to our
this?
girls?
And like, we're going to talk about that too.
Whereas like boy fantasy, like you shit like Transformers or like all these,
or like these male adult kids books that we were talking about, like the Chocolate War and like all these fucking
that's
masculine...
a whole other chapter. We were just talking about books that traumatized us as teenagers.
That was what we were talking about before the show. But it's like kind of relevant because this is a book for teen girls, and like the books that are quote unquote for teen boys are like often really violent and like often like survivalist fantasy stuff. There's a lot of like boy goes and lives in the mountains
and women are like objects that are usually traded around.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of that crap. So I guess it's just like, you know, don't be gender essentialist about your teenage fantasies and like what's dangerous, quote unquote. Like
if there's a moral to this podcast, that's it.
Yeah, it kind of is.
This episode.
We've talked about a lot of different... I don't think we've yet done a movie that's as much about a supposed female fantasy as Twilight is.
No, I mean,
this is like our first sort of romantic. It's not a rom-com, but I was going to say that.
So much comedy. It lacks comedy.
I laughed at a lot of this movie.
Intentional comedy it lacks, yeah.
This is our first like very romantic movie.
Right. We've dealt with like female aspiration, but in more like
there's romance in the other movies we've done, but this movie's entirely about romance.
Yes, which is admittedly it's like I was telling Maddie, like if I had a preteen daughter, who was like, "Mom, I really want to watch the Twilight movies, or I want to read the book or something like that," I would probably allow it, but I would want to have a conversation about the relationships depicted because it's not like I get that it's fantasy, but I don't necessarily think 12-year-olds can discern that it's fantasy.
Yeah, and I think it's good to sort of lay down why it's a fantasy and just kind of talk openly about why that is. So let's I guess explain that part. So
should we start with like the plot?
Yeah, sure. So this is still spoiler free, although how anyone could possibly evade spoilers for Twilight, I don't fucking know.
Do you think the fact that he's a vampire is a spoiler? No, that's the whole billing.
I don't know how to divide up this show because
do you think people care about spoilers for Twilight?
I don't.
For
but if
2008's
you do,
Twilight?
I guess I'll just go ahead and put the spoiler song in here in case anybody fucking does. Whatever. Go watch the movie and come back.
Yeah, if you care about spoilers for Twilight, you can just leave.
Can a movie really be spoiled? Does knowing the plot really ruin a movie? It's sort of a philosophical question. We can't answer that for you. Just figure out what you want to do. But if you don't want to know the plot, turn this off right now.
On that topic, I was like, the people who made this movie and the circumstances under which this movie came out, I think everyone already knew the story before they even saw the movie, right? Like this was one of those situations where going into the movie, you knew what this was.
What you were going to get. And it was, I mean, it was definitely catered to, like, they were making it for mega fans of the book.
And this was a situation where mega fans of the book like the movies in general. Yeah. There's exceptions, but in general, the fans of the books have like really enjoyed the movies, really liked the casting. Wow. People loved the Robert Pattinson, Kristen Stewart chemistry at first, which is why it was so heartbreaking when they broke up in real life. Like, I remember the fandom being like very into this casting.
Interesting.
I
had no idea.
The only casting that I remember people being really upset about is that one of the black one of the black vampires in the movie is white in the books, and people were mad about that
because
people are fucking racist. So that I remember being a controversy at the time, but that's the only controversy
so
I
cool.
remember.
That's so cool of people. I love when people do that.
It's great when people
remember Idris Elba and Thor.
In Thor, yeah.
People are fucking guys. Don't be racist.
I feel like this was one of the early examples of like genre fiction getting adapted for movies.
Yeah,
I mean, there's Harry Potter also, but like that stayed pretty true to the books for better or for worse. But
by
this was a
no black people in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was a situation where they changed something from the books, and they were like, "What if we just cast a black character for this or black actor for this?"
He was
and
actually
like,
I
thought he did a great performance.
I thought he was of the like baddie vampires. They thought he was the best.
Yeah, they all have like 5 lines, but he did great in his 5 lines.
Of the highly nuanced roles of the mean vampires.
There's no good parts in this movie. There's like nothing.
I will say the only part I'm like, this character's kind of interesting was the angry sister. Even though they don't ever explain that she's angry, I was like, at least she has like some complexity going on. Like warring impulses.
Gets to act and emotion other than like placid acceptance or horniness. Yeah, there's a lot of horniness in this.
There's a lot of gasping and staring at each other.
There's so much gasping. Yeah. Okay, so I like was trying to find merit in this movie throughout because I don't really enjoy making fun of things that teen girls like. No. I don't. And I think that like the fact that
it's done too much too.
It is done too much. Yeah. And so I really try to look for merit in these things. At this point, and I can understand the fantasy of Edward, I think. And I think we both can. We talked about this a little bit before we recorded, where like the fantasy is he is extremely physically powerful, but he has control over that. Yeah. And he doesn't want to have sex with Bella until they're married. First of all, spoilers for the books later.
Right. And like later on, he can't have sex with her.
Well, he chooses not to. He's basically like, I can't do it. Let's not.
Because she's a human. Right. And he's a vampire, so he's like super too strong or whatever.
Yeah. Although they do end up having sex while she's still a human later on. Yeah. But it's only after they're married.
Yes, it is only after they're married.
So it's fine.
Yeah,
and
it's fine.
I think that this movie and the first book start to set up some of those metaphors where like turning into a vampire is sort of a metaphor for getting married and pledging eternal commitment to somebody.
But it's also,
it's also a metaphor for sex. But those two things kind of go hand in hand. Yeah. Because this is a very Mormon-friendly message.
Where sex equals marriage and marriage equals sex.
Yes. Like you finally get to get married, and the great news about getting married is you get to have sex finally, and it's great, and marriage is great, and every time you have sex, it's amazing. That's all in the later books for sure, is that Bella and Edward have a monogamous, incredible sex life, and it's so good. Like that's a fantasy.
I want to take a minute to, everyone's like, why is this like a fantasy? Okay.
Yeah.
Here is the basic plot line behind the entire Twilight series and why it's a teenage girl fantasy.
Yeah.
You move to a new town. Everyone wants to be your friend, and they think you're super cool and interesting.
Yep.
The hottest guy in school,
who no one has ever gotten to date before.
Yeah, who's like totally out of reach of everybody else,
bad boy.
Is obsessed with you and is like so into you and is driven crazy by you. You guys fall in love. Mm-hmm. And you get to meet his super cool family, and they live in a big mansion.
Yep.
And they all love you mostly.
Yeah.
And they're all like weirdly beautiful and creepy.
Everyone is beautiful, and they're accepting
and wealthy. There's no economic anxiety in this whole thing. There's a lot of material
can talk
wealth.
about that because I feel like this is a classic vampire trope, is that vampires represent the aristocracy. Oh. And historically, werewolves represent the proletariat. That's always how it goes.
Holy shit.
We can get to that shit later.
Oh my God. You just made me way more interested in Twilight. Anyway.
That's not a Twilightism. That's just like
that's so cool.
Literature analysis stuff.
His sister becomes like your best friend, thinks you're totally cool. Mm-hmm. You guys, and then there's like this other hot guy who's like warring for your attention.
Oh my God.
For a little bit.
Your like childhood best friend is there, and he's cute
so
too,
into you,
and he's really into you.
And for like a while, you give him some attention because you're like not sure about like this other guy's kind of got cold feet, but then like you know that you and this other guy are meant for each other. You guys get married. You wear like the prettiest wedding dress. Everyone is jealous of you. The hot guy even makes a last ditch attempt to like win you away because everyone's so obsessed with you and you're so hot and like beautiful. Mm-hmm. You go on like this really romantic getaway honeymoon. You have a baby. Baby gets born.
You get superpowers.
Wait. Right. Well, the baby's born is like super beautiful, wonderful baby.
The baby's the most beautiful baby in
ever,
the world.
and actually has magical powers. You get magical powers. You're like an all-powerful being, and not only are you a vampire, you are like more powerful than all the vampires. You're a super special
the actual
vampire.
ending of all the Twilight books. Again, spoilers. Right. She becomes the most powerful vampire of
like ever.
All of them, and it's not explained why.
No, it just happens.
She has more superpowers than any other vampire in the books.
Right.
As established by the rules of the books.
They get a free house.
Yep.
Have amazing sex all the time,
constantly.
Obviously. The baby.
There's essentially no conflicts except for exterior conflicts where people are trying to drive Bella and Edward apart for bogus reasons, all of which are solved.
The baby's mostly taken care of by like this hot family. Yeah. And the baby also grows up super fast. You don't really have to deal with like that baby shit for a long time.
There's like barely any baby shit at all. The baby grows into like a beautiful 18-year-old perfect girl.
Right. Instantly. And then you're all just like a super hot, super powerful, superhuman family.
Yes.
And that's the fantasy. So like if you break it down to like just that, it's like, oh, like it sounds silly, but like I think that sounds okay to me.
Yeah.
Like to live in a world where everyone's like, Mary Ellen, you're so cool. I'm gonna fight for your love. Like, you know, that's there hits at like basic human desires. So
I mean, I think that there are a lot of power fantasies,
and that's Twilight
across gender that have this same structure. Yeah. Like the power fantasy that you meet someone else, they have superpowers that are mysterious. You eventually realize you can get those superpowers if you prove yourself.
Yeah.
You get them. There's a love story. Eventually you become the most powerful person of all, and then the story ends. That's so...
And you get to be like hot and healthy forever.
Yeah, you get to be gorgeous. You get to end up with your true love and be extremely powerful. Like those are just core storytelling things.
Right.
It's not even like a new story on any level. So there's just nothing different happening.
Right. And so like looking at Twilight, I totally get why it could be like a fun indulgent thing.
Yes. And I think that like also just within the part of Twilight that we're discussing, which is just the setup. I think that
the first
there's
book, you mean?
Something very appealing about like a guy who knows that he's physically stronger than you, which statistically guys usually are physically stronger than their partners. Yeah. If they're women partners. But he isn't going to do anything. And it's like established repeatedly that he's like, I realize I could hurt you, but I won't. I'm going to protect you. Like, at least when I was a kid, and like, this was like before I read Twilight, I was taught like, you know, guys can't control themselves, which is not true. We know this now, but like this is like very old school gender roles stuff. Right. Where like in sex ed, a lot of times girls are told like you have to guard your virginity, and like guys are really gonna push you hard for it and stuff. But like Twilight actually does some twists on that by having Bella want to have sex.
Yeah, Edward's the one who keeps being like, chill out.
And like that's treated as a normal thing. Yeah. Which is radical, sadly.
In a weird way, yeah.
The fact that the female character is like, I have a sex drive. I really want to fuck you. Like that alone, I think, is a fantasy because it's very rarely portrayed, unfortunately. Usually the female character, not always, there's great examples of teen romances where there's sort of an equal partnership where like both characters want to have sex, but they don't for whatever reason. Or they do, and it's fine or bad or whatever. But in this, she really wants to have sex. Edward wants to have sex with her too, but he's just like, I've got the superpowers and I don't know if I can control them. So like, let's not do it. I don't know.
Well, and also in a way where she is very clearly interested in him and sexually interested in him. And that doesn't, like, she pursues him and that doesn't frighten him or make him retreat. Which, like a lot of times sexually aggressive portrayals of women, the men are like, back off, I don't like this. I want to be the pursuer. Right. So in a way, that's like a fantasy thing too.
And like, I know that people are constantly like, well, Bella's very passive as a character.
Which she is, admittedly.
And like, that's definitely true. But I think the fact that everything that happens to her is like just a teen girl fantasy is like... kind of, it's not empowering, but it's at least like understandable, like why these are the specific things that are quote unquote happening to Bella is like, oh, well, because she's not making these things happen, but like there's a reason why Stephanie Meyer wrote for these things to be the things that happen to her.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, she makes a choice in the first book / movie where she's like, I'm in love with Edward and I want to become a vampire and be with him forever. And she is adamant about that choice. She reiterates it.
Eventually gets her wish.
Yeah. And so it's, I mean,
she wants to fucking be immortal.
You're right. I mean, respect, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. So, but like, we do have to talk about the things that are bad. Which,
should we talk about the actual plot itself? Because we haven't really.
We can. We basically covered it.
Yeah,
she
but I
meets
covered
a hot
all
vampire.
the books.
You did.
Yeah.
But in just this movie,
Bella moves to Forks, Washington
for essentially no reason.
Her mom wants to go on.
I know there are reasons, but you know what I mean.
Maddie, I paid attention. Also, the beginning,
the opening monologue.
The opening monologue doesn't make any sense.
I feel like they cut some sentences out.
They must have, because I literally rewound
because
it and
she repeats
to
those
it.
lines later.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be me, guys. Literally, the way it starts is if I haven't thought a lot about how I'm gonna die, but if I had to die for somebody I loved, I don't think that would be so bad. Then there's like a pause. That's why I'm moving to Forks. It's like, what?
Yeah. But then when she repeats those lines way later in the movie,
then it actually makes sense.
She says, die for somebody I love. That's fine. That's why I don't regret any of the choices that I've made.
Yeah. Well,
and I was like, why didn't they leave that third sentence in there? Because that would have at least sort of led you back and had her be like, let me explain.
It's also interesting.
It all started when I moved to Forks, Washington, home of the vampires.
It's also interesting that line sets you up to think she dies for Edward when she's really ready to go die for her mother. So that's
right.
Kind of
and that's the only twist in this whole movie.
What are you trying to say? Anyway, she moves to Forks, Washington. She's like super bummed out. She has to go live with her mustache dad.
But I think she kind of chooses this. At least in the books she does.
She's bummed out, though.
She is bummed, but in the books she's more like, I didn't want to like be on the road with my mom and new
this
stepdad. Like that seemed like a weird way to live, so I wanted to like go and just be in high school like a normal kid.
Yeah. She goes to the high school. Everybody's immediately fascinated by her.
Yeah, so it's like kind of established within this that she is so beautiful that every guy in school instantly wants to date her.
But all the teenage boys.
These teenage boys don't act normal.
They act very, very silly. Well, one of them is like presenting as gay.
Yeah.
Dude, and
this is a bad stereotype too, where like the only Asian male character is presented
like
as
highly
like
effeminate,
sexless, effeminate, like tie wearing to school. Like he wears like very foppish outfits, and
it's
like
very weird.
I did not care for that.
But he's not gay because he's really interested in Bella.
He's not, but like he's presented as like an effeminate character in a way that is bizarre, and all the boys are presented as like just sort of sexless puppy dogs who are like
they act like children.
At her.
Yeah, like one like runs up and kisses her on the cheek. The one
black character who doesn't have a name, almost kills her. Also, like kisses her on the cheek without asking in the first scene.
One of them,
they're all terrible.
They all keep like shoving like worms or dirt in her face.
They're the worst.
And then one of them comes in.
I think we're supposed to just take from this like teenage boys are awful, right? Wouldn't
like,
you like to date 100-year-old vampire?
Like to be fair, teenage boys are awful, but not in this way.
Yeah, I know.
I guess they couldn't have teenage boys being like, I don't know.
I guess so,
inappropriate.
But like, I feel like there were some times when I was like, these teenage boys are acting like teenage boys, but there were other moments when I was like, these teenage boys are like too clear about their affections in ways that teenage boys aren't.
Are not.
Like the thing that struck me as realistic is the part where Bella is over by her car and one of the boys throws a Twizzler at her from across the parking lot and hits her in the hair.
Yeah.
And she turns around and she's like, I'm reading a book.
Right.
That scene, I was like,
teenage boy
that
flirtation.
was my high school experience.
Getting hit in the head with Twizzlers.
Yeah.
Mostly.
There was like a guy in middle school who threw pens at me constantly.
Oh.
And I just thought he hated me, and I'm still pretty sure he did. But my mom was like, I think he likes you. I will never know.
I hate when moms make excuses for that.
I will literally never know what the truth was about this guy.
Never make excuses for that.
Yeah, it was bullshit.
I hate that shit.
But anyway, that like really took me back where I was like, yeah, teenage boys do randomly throw things at a girl.
Yes. That was more real. But then like the part where like he comes in from the rain and like and he shakes his wet like hat off on her. He goes, "How you liking the rain, girl?" I'm like, what the fuck is happening? No one has ever spoken like this or done this thing. Like, I get that, like, teenage boys can sometimes, like, bug the girls they like, but, like...
Yeah, that was really funny. So, like, in every
I don't just surf the internet. That was a great line.
That was great, all these boys are horrible, and we're supposed to like think they're really corny and not refined and not like
but
educated
not
and intellectual. Like again,
Edward,
this 100-year-old vampire who listens to Debussy and can play the piano and like all of those things are we're supposed to think they're romantic because he's fucking old. It's like dating an old man.
Oh God, can you imagine? Anyway, so on like the first day, she sees the Cullens are at the school, and
she's instantly transfixed by
their
them.
cover is that they're just a giant foster family who all like does each other.
Yeah, like all the kids date each other.
All the kids dating, and like
I love how none of the vampires look young enough to be in high school.
No.
That's like a huge
Emmett looks
part
like a
of this.
35-year-old.
All of them look
he's
like
Jack.
35
yeah,
to me.
So that's also
and
insane.
even like Robert Pattinson, I'm pretty sure they are the right age when they're in this movie, but they're all wearing so much makeup that I'm
it's
like,
hard to tell.
You all look 25.
And he's got the goofy hair going.
Yeah. It's just funny to me.
It is funny. So she like the Cullens are this mysterious family, and Edward is super, super hot. He doesn't have a parent.
He's the only one who doesn't
within a foster
have
family.
a girlfriend. Yeah.
Foster girlfriend.
Yeah.
And Bella's instantly like very curious about him.
Yeah, and I mean I think everybody knows this part of the story, so I don't know how much detail we have to do here, but like it starts out with...
They have a science lab together.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's the whole...
So Edward has his vampire superpower is mind reading.
Yeah.
And he can't read Bella's mind, but we don't know
find
any
out
of this
later.
yet. But in the books, it's all explained really, like in so much detail. Is like,
but she smells really, really good.
She smells
Her
really
blood
good.
is like
and
super special.
So she has like multiple. This is where the multiple superpowers start to play
it's
in.
a little Mary Sue-ish.
Oh yeah, it is.
But when she walks into the biology lab, the fan goes behind her, and so I guess her scent goes everywhere. And Edward's supposed to convey that he lusts for her blood, like,
but
he's
instead he looks like he's gonna throw up.
He looks disgusted. He like covers his nose and looks like he's gonna vomit everywhere.
I genuinely love these scenes.
It frustrated me because I'm like, you could make this like teen romance shit, you know?
Yeah, but in the book, he acts like he hates her.
Oh, I feel like in the movies he was really inconsistent.
Yeah,
like at one point he'd be like kind of like suave, apathetic like guy, and then he'd be way too interested in the details of her life, and then he'd get mad at her, and then he'd cycle through that again. I was like, what is happening?
What's funny about that to me is that all of that is in the book too. Like Edward has like the weirdest personality ever, and like. Just sometimes he like really cares about the details of Bella's life. Like they have like a personal joke about how she has to brush her teeth and he doesn't. And like there's so much stupid shit in the books.
Really funny jokes.
Yeah. I mean, they make one reference to it in the movies. She calls it a human minute where she has to like go do something that only humans need to do. Like take a shit. But they don't call it that. No, I'm just kidding. That's not in the books at all. But she's like, oh, I have to shower and I have to like brush my teeth and stuff. But vampires don't need to do any of those things.
He doesn't need to sleep.
Yeah, all this shit is like crazy. So anyway,
well, she eventually finds out something's up with Edward when he saves her in the parking lot when a car almost crashes into her.
Before that, he just acts like an asshole.
Yeah.
And she doesn't like him at
But
this
she's
point.
obsessed with him.
Kind of, yeah, because
she's
he's
like, what's
really
your problem?
hot.
What's your issue?
And he's
oh, can I do a Mary Ellen fact check?
Sure.
This is really important. Guys, in the biolab scene, Edward, so he like lusts after blood and stuff like that, and he's really like overwhelmed and concerned. So right after class, he runs to the principal's office, and he's talking to the receptionist. He's like, "I got it. You're sure every other class is full?" And she's like, "Yes, I'm sorry. All the other science classes are full. There's nothing we can do."
It's not a college. Like you can't fucking change classes.
But guys, it's established. Thank you. When Bella starts at the school, it is in the middle of the semester. It is March. Okay, you can't. Even if it is college, you can't just change your science lab halfway through the semester. So I don't know what the fuck Edward was thinking.
I don't know.
Why was that receptionist even entertaining his little whims?
I don't know, because he's really hot and he's got like vampire psychic powers and stuff. So.
Other than that, this whole movie was like incredibly accurate. But that was the one.
That was the one thing that I was like, yeah, what's up
bullshit.
with this?
Yeah.
But yeah, technically the secretary does say no to him though. She's
but she was like, it's all full. Well, no shit, it's all full. It's halfway through the semester.
Yeah, I know. Also, like he would fucking fail. But he's matriculated so many times that he could probably pass any class.
Yeah, he's super smart. I mean, he knew like the science stuff.
Yeah, in the books he knows everything. And it's like because he's taken high school 1,000 fucking times.
Even if I looked like a little young, you could not pay me enough to go back to high school.
I know, this is such a ridiculous premise. Like,
can you imagine? No.
It's terrible.
Maybe he wants to find a wife. A teenage wife.
That's kind of implied too. That's
like, gross. That's gross as hell.
He's gonna
like
meet
100.
somebody and then, turn her into eternal vampire.
Go join a club. Join a gardening club.
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of problems with the fantasy,
Join
but
Tinder.
I mean, again, this is like kind of why it's a fantasy, right?
Yeah,
it's because it's like
right.
this guy's been around for 100 years,
and he's been
met
waiting
a
for
lot
you, Bella,
of 16-year-old girls before.
Yeah, but none of them have been like
really
you.
Special.
And he even says shit like that. It's like, I've been waiting for you all my life.
Yeah.
And blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so do we want to like get to the supposed romance? I mean, this is where I start to have problems with the movie. I think the movie's actually pretty fun when it's setting up.
It really frustrated me with their whole like it was like no one has consistent characterization.
No,
here.
I know, and they don't in the books either, which is tough. The books are
so I guess it's
short.
like they didn't have much to do with the source material.
They don't.
But
they really
saves
just
her.
adapted the source material, and that's part of why when I was watching this movie, I was like, they really did the best they could with what they had here,
Right.
because like. There's so little to work with. Like the things about this movie that don't make sense didn't make sense in the books. So what are you supposed to do?
After Edward saves her, he like gaslights her, which I found uncomfortable.
I hate that.
He's like, because she's like, you ran across the parking lot and stopped a car with your hand. He's like, what are you talking about?
I was standing right next to you.
Yeah, I think you're confused. And that makes me really uncomfortable because that's abusive behavior. Guys, don't allow that.
Did you like it when he started stalking her? Was that behavior that you thought was cool?
That I'm into.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. When he started showing up in her bedroom, which was like around that same time period.
It's such a funny scene too because it's supposed to be either creepy or romantic, and it just ends up being hysterically funny because he's not like reclining he's not being like a seductive chill vampire watching.
No, he's just standing in the
literally
corner.
just standing, like looking uncomfortable and kind of hunched.
I have a lot of questions about this movie, but one of them was like, what genre are we in? Because sometimes it's a horror movie,
right?
And that's a horror movie
because there are cutaway scenes where we see the bad vampires who've come to town killing people.
Yes, and we don't yet know who they are for some of those.
Or if they're like Edward's friends or anything.
Exactly.
So that's kind of scary.
So let's imagine that you knew nothing about this movie going in.
Somehow.
You might think to yourself, oh, is this going to result in like
Bella getting eaten
or having to fight off vampires at some point? Like, where's this going to go for her?
Yeah.
Is this Edward guy actually good? Oh, you fucking know that though. At no point do you really think that he's dangerous, do you? And like, I mean, he's dangerous in the sense that he's an asshole, but like the things that he does that are dangerous are like being a shitty boyfriend, like stalking his partner and like being shitty to her.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's not because he's a vampire that he's dangerous.
No, he's just like a dick.
Yeah. So like
who like doesn't respect her boundaries.
Yeah, and like
but in a weird like
thinks it's cool to spy on her, and that's before they're dating. Like way before.
Well, I think the fantasy element is like Bella's into it.
Yes.
And I think we see that kind of like at the end there's bad vampire guy who wants to hunt and kill Bella.
And it's all sexualized.
It's very sexualized.
It's framed. I mean, all the vampire stuff is framed as sexy or as being like a sexual thing, which is classic vampire story stuff.
Right.
Like the experience of being bitten is often like presented as orgasmic almost, and like all those scenes at the end, like we're really skipping ahead here, but like where Bella's like writhing on the ground in pain
after she gets a vampire bite.
But like a lot of that stuff I was like, this is like weirdly sexual too.
It is. Well, and I think it draws a line between like this is non-consensual vampire fuckery whereas before this was like consensual vampire fuckery.
Right.
Because Bella was like,
I mean,
into it.
I'm not saying it's like good, but like it.
No.
I just think like the vampire as sex thing is just, it's a classic vampire trope, and it's something that this movie does.
And I think within the universe of the story, we're supposed to understand Edward's creepy vampire stuff is good. Bella's into it. As much as I disagree with like the whole. And
there's no way he could know. So that's like, this is like the thing that you talk to your daughter about in the future. This by being part of the conversation. Listen, like your future boyfriend isn't going to have superpowers, and he's not gonna. You're gonna have to actually talk to him about your boundaries.
If he yells at you and shoves you in a car.
Oh my God.
Which like
so we gotta backtrack a little because we didn't talk about Jacob at all.
Jacob's like not in this movie much though.
He's really not.
He pops up and he's like, hey, remember me? We used to be friends as kids. And he actually seems like friendly, well-adjusted dude. Yeah,
this is what's tough about it because like when the books were first coming out, there were a lot of people who were like, why doesn't Bella date Jacob?
Right.
Like there were Team Edward, Team Jacob.
Oh my God,
was like a huge thing. Yeah. And like I think that
tore
if
the country
you
apart.
Actually read all the books, and I haven't seen all the movies, so I don't know to what extent this is there, but like Jacob is just as sort of overprotective to the point of inappropriateness with Bella as Edward is.
Yes.
And they do start to set that up, and even in this movie, especially at the end, where he jokingly is like, my family is going to be watching you, Bella. But then like when Edward runs into him, he narrows his eyes and you can tell that like,
growls at him.
He really is going to be watching her. And he kind of is like, I don't think you should date this guy. And like, it's like,
but I feel like in a weird, like Jacob's okay by me in this movie because
I mean, he's fine in this movie, but it's setting up the fact that he's going to start to be like, hey, like,
shitty.
You should date me and not have a choice in who you're dating.
Right. Because when he does that, like, we'll be like, he's like, my dad paid me $20 to come tell you this.
It starts out with like you being sympathetic to him.
Right.
But then when Edward comes out and Jacob looks really pissed off, it's like, why are you mad, dude?
Yeah. Like what?
Like, what's your problem?
I think we're supposed to be like, oh, it's the cold ones versus the wolves.
So like, there's
I don't
some
think
fucking racist shit in this movie.
It's I mean,
with the fact that the Native American characters are all also werewolves.
The boys mostly only.
Only the boys.
Yeah, there's one girl that's a werewolf girl that we meet later.
This is all later. And like, but it's set up in this movie.
And Jacob isn't a werewolf yet.
He's not, but I think he knows.
Because once you hit like werewolf puberty, that's when you become werewolf.
You hit werewolf puberty.
So it's like a puberty
and then
thing.
you, as long as you continue to regularly turn into a werewolf, you never age. That's part of it. I don't think they explain that in the movies,
bullshit.
But it's in the books.
That's not a werewolf thing.
It's so that everybody can just live forever and like be really hot forever.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So like Jacob doesn't have his werewolf powers yet, but his family.
He's the one who kind of clues Bella into the fact that something's up with Edward. Well, she's like curious. But Jacob's like...
And he's kind of curious, too. They're both in a similar position here.
Because he doesn't have all the information yet. He doesn't really find out until later movies that his family's actually werewolves. Yeah. But he's like, there's this legend.
Like, here's a legend that, like, my family's werewolves. And, like, it's just a legend. And, like...
And their great enemies were...
they met these...
Cold ones.
These cold ones.
AKA the Colons, if you haven't caught on.
AKA the
vampire family,
And so, like, they showed this flashback of, like... shitty costumes of like colonial settlers. Yeah. Like those costumes were terrible.
I was like, what's the date of these? I was like, what timeline are we in? Because there's Native Americans. Like
for some reason that really took me out of it. That I was like, why?
It was like me and the changing classes halfway this semester thing. I feel you. I totally feel you.
I gotta like make a separate theme song for this. I'm not
for
gonna
your
do
own
that.
Maddie fact check.
No, because I don't know enough about like this. But I do know
I'm totally in the dark
these
about.
Past vampires were wearing wrong historical garb. I don't
really
know
wrong.
anything, but it was like ridiculous.
Yeah.
And like the Native Americans, I guess, was fine. I think they invented all of that stuff anyway because they're wearing like wolf masks and stuff. So I don't think it's based on anything, which is unfortunate because it
just adds like an air of mysticism to it by saying it's shitty
because
gross.
it's like taking existing legends and like
watering it down so it fits into your vampire
and being like, okay, so now they're werewolves because I said so.
Right.
It's not cool, Stephanie Meyer. It's not cool that you did that. Many other people have criticized that.
Yeah.
People can look
and probably much better than we are.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
We're just like, it's bad.
It's not great though. Yeah. And it's anyway, so we can talk about the metaphor thing about vampires and it totally holds up here because I think Jacob and his family are presented as like not wealthy necessarily.
That's true.
He lives on the reservation. He doesn't go to school with the white kids.
Right.
And like he establishes all that stuff. And so that's, I thought, pretty cool. I was like, this is neat.
There's like, a class narrative there.
That, like, you know, Bella knows this guy and like they're friends. Also, and his dad's disabled and that's in the book. And like it's treated as normal, at least by story standards. Like it doesn't stand out here. Like all those things are like kind of interesting. It like adds other elements to everyone's characters that like these people know each other. How do they meet? What's their story?
Right.
You never find any of that out because apparently it's not interesting.
Not
that
as
Bella's
interesting as
dad happens to be friends with Jacob's dad. Yeah. How did they meet? Like, what's their deal?
Also, Bella, I think we're supposed to understand as being a like working class.
I think so,
because she's got like the beat up truck, and like kids talk about it when she pulls in. Her mom is like
a hippie, but she's dating like a minor league baseball player, which is like very.
So I mean, Edward represents like opulence. And
I think
material
that's
security and stuff.
Really evident, and like
in his like bomb ass mansion house.
The original sort of vampire legends, as it were like sort of about fear of the aristocracy, and like that's why. All the tools to kill vampires are things that poor people can get, like wooden crosses and garlic, and all the tools that you need to kill werewolves are things that rich people have, like silver bullets. That's like a legit thing. That's why werewolves are the basest instincts of man. They're like animalistic and horrifying.
Right.
And like, you know, vampires are like
seductive
classy and like it's
they
sexual,
follow rules and stuff.
They're going to prey upon women and like, you know, take advantage of poor women and then just leave them for dead or whatever, which I'm sure aristocrats used to do and still do. So like these things are rooted in real fears.
That's interesting. Well,
I mean, they're reflected again here, whether Stephenie Meyer realizes that she's aware of perpetuating these things or not. But these are like,
well, her whole thing was like, I had a dream about dating a vampire boy or something.
The scene where Bella and Edward are lying in the field together.
God, what a boring dream.
Really boring. Boresville.
Snoozeville.
After that gets at the biggest problem I have with this romance, which is that these characters never talk to each other.
No, and we were talking about this. We see montages where like the camera zooms out and goes around them and stuff, and they're talking, but it's muted to us. We don't hear it, so it's like it's implied that they're like really connecting and getting closer and stuff like that. But it's like a shortcut. We're like, okay,
yeah.
You miss. It's basically all the fun of like romantic comedies or romances, even like romantic dramas or whatever.
Yeah.
Like the part that you like is when like
gone.
people are falling.
Like those things are taken
just like
out,
fast forward
and
through that.
Replaced entirely by staring and just like sexy stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's some scenes where there's the scene where Edward tries to kiss Bella and she wants to go further and he has to like tear himself away.
Which is like kind of sexy.
Yeah, I mean there's that kind of thing.
Because it was all about the whole element of like this dude wants to like ravish you,
but he's gonna
hold back. Yeah.
So that's and there's the scenes where she's like riding on his back through the forest and he uses his super speed.
Silly.
It's so
oh my
silly.
God.
Like we have tons of scenes where we see them together.
Yeah.
And he plays the song for her, and in the book it's established that he wrote her that song. And I'm like, you weren't even dating her yet, you fucking weirdo. But he wrote her a song and she loves it.
And in the Riff Tracks version, they make up lyrics to the song. It's like, I want to eat your flesh. Like it's really good. And so I was like, I was remembering some of them listening, so it was all very goofy for me.
Yeah.
But in like teen girl land, it's like this guy.
Yeah, like he wrote me a song.
That's like.
He has super speed. I mean, these are classic things.
Right. Oh, it's so funny. Well, and he's, were we supposed, the whole reveal scene where he's like, I'm a vampire, and like freaks out at her and stuff like that. Is that
you could outrun me?
Is that supposed to be silly as fuck? Because it is.
I actually don't think it is, but it's so funny.
It's really, really funny.
The part
like,
where
God
he says,
bless Robert
and this
Pattinson.
Is the line that is mocked around the world is the skin of a killer, Bella.
They have the sound effect.
It is genuinely so funny that I'm like, did they know that this was so funny?
I mean, the actors had to have known.
I think they must have known.
Yeah, they had to have. We really need to get Robert Pattinson on here.
We gotta get Rob on the show. He might do it because he
doesn't give a fuck.
He doesn't give a fuck, and he like has dinner with Twilight fans and shit.
For real, I didn't know that.
He's like a weirdo.
He seems like a total weirdo, but in like an interesting way.
Yeah, I mean weirdo as a compliment. Like
cool.
he like seems like
good weirdo.
Hilariously weird to me.
Because I know like the fun thing for me about like the last Twilight movie or something, when they were doing promotion for it, both him and Kristen Stewart like clearly stopped giving a fuck and started becoming a little more open with like the parts they saw as really, really silly. But in doing it, like they tried their best, but as some others, like I remember an interview where he was like, yeah, at one point, a bunch of vampires Google vampire baby because they don't know what the vampire baby's gonna do.
There's like a pivotal Googling scene in this movie,
I feel like every Twilight movie has a Googling scene. It's very Supernatural-esque.
What's funny is that like this happens in a lot of bad movies, like
Supernatural.
A character needs to like Google something.
But I was impressed they actually got Google. It wasn't like search it up. It was like actual. They paid to have Google featured.
And like, it was 2008, so it was like, and the books came out before that, so it was like still in that sort of middle time period where like the character also needed to go get a book in order to find out more information because it wasn't all available online.
Right. Well, it was like a secret Native American bookstore.
Yeah, she had to like find a specific bookstore in order to find. And then we never see her reading the book.
No.
And we never see her with the book.
No. And then rapists are waiting outside.
Yeah, that was. Oh my God, this movie is crazy. crazy.
Guys, the attempted rape scene is so...
I forgot that this happened.
Well, I brought it up to you and you're like,
did.
what?
I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, and because
it doesn't need to be there.
Oh, it super doesn't. And
so I forgot it happened.
Also, the way it's conveyed, because this is a PG-13 movie, ostensibly aimed towards like young girls. It's like we as adults, we know the cues. Like, she's walking down a dark alleyway. These two men block the exit, and so she has to walk around. And then the other men like go in a circle around her, and they're like, "Where are you going?"
Like all of a sudden, there's like 12 guys,
and they just are like bumping into her like bumper cars. But like, and then what are you doing? Where are you going?
Yeah,
where are you going, beautiful? And like, and we're supposed to get this as like an assault is about to happen.
Yes,
but like they can't really.
But then Edward swerves around the corner.
Oh my god, I actually died laughing because this car fucking it's like it peels out
in
like
the books. It's like repeatedly established that all the vampires love driving. They all have sports cars.
Oh gosh,
and they're all
again
really
with like
fast drivers
and stuff.
And also like impulsivity and like living dangerously. They all like race really fast. Like that's repeatedly established. But again, for no reason.
But I mean, to be fair though, if I were like a vampire that couldn't die unless you tore my head off and set me on fire, I'd probably race around really fast.
But I mean, if you're driving a human passenger, why are you being such a weirdo?
Yeah, because he drives up like and gets out of the car and he's like, Bella, get in the car, and like fucking throws her in.
And then he like
looks. Does he growl?
Yes.
I know he like looked and all the guys were like, whoa.
And just under his breath, he's like, oh.
You know what you want your boyfriend to do.
Yeah, and then for some reason that freaks them out. But I mean, I think
he has like vampire
he has
power.
kind of supernatural things.
Yeah, that Bella is like kind of immune to, I think.
Yeah,
we're supposed
and there's a lot of like sort of semi-supernatural stuff that happens. Like, we're just meant to believe that there are certain magic is real according to this, and like I think Bella's allure is also supposed to be kind of supernatural.
Yeah, I mean, there's some
even within the books, like it's sort of established that like even by normal human standards,
she's different.
The fact that she's able to block his mind reading,
she's immune to, even before she becomes a vampire. She's immune to all vampire powers.
She already has a magical power even as a human.
Yeah, so
and
she's
like,
already special.
That magical power becomes significantly stronger once she becomes a vampire, and she starts being able to create force fields.
Right. She can protect other people from vampire powers, which is
like
kind of cool.
She already essentially has a magical power that she just doesn't know about until she meets Edward.
Right. Which I guess if vampires and werewolves can exist,
yes,
why can't
exactly.
like random
why
magical
can't
abilities?
She just have a magical ability? And she does for no reason.
So that's part of why Edward finds her so interesting is because he can't like read
and
her
like
mind.
Within the world of the show, I was kind of like, and it would be interesting if they spelled this out, but they fucking don't. But I was like, maybe that allure extends to other humans. Like perhaps in addition to being as hot as Kristen Stewart is,
boys,
and Bella, I think we're supposed to believe Bella really is hot.
Like I already said this to you, her hair looks amazing in these movies, guys.
They make her look amazing.
I don't lust after, like usually I'm like, oh, long hair looks pretty, but like I like having short hair. But her, I'm like, I need this hair.
It looks so good.
It's amazing, yeah.
Just get a wig, honestly. I mean, there's no way it's all real. I think they put a bunch of extra.
What if I just showed up next podcast going just a long blonde,
just like a gorgeous, like but like a beautiful.
Yeah, I guess
wig.
if you like go like high level with it.
I say go high level.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was like,
I'll get a
maybe
wig.
baby Bella has a supernatural allure.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many missed opportunities.
This is like
in
the
series.
billionth time we've done a movie about a woman with a supernatural allure. But anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
She has one.
Right.
I guess.
I mean, this one
but
there's
that's
actually
part of the
like magic in
too.
it.
Yeah. So there's magic in this world, and that was how I interpreted that. I guess.
But I think you're right, and I haven't read the books, but it seems like the way everyone like responds to Bella and wants to like. The bad guys want to hunt her.
Yes.
The good guys want to protect her. It's like, I mean, that is like a feminine fantasy. Like, I'm so pretty, like protect me and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so delicate.
Yeah, but also like no one can resist me.
Right.
Like everybody's like throwing themselves at me, and like sometimes that's terrifying because some men are predatory, but
this man will protect me. Yeah.
Edward is also very dangerous, but is willing to hold back for me.
Like it's
not
vommy,
like
but it's also like
guys.
we get it.
Yeah. So anyway, vampire baseball.
Oh yeah, they play This was
the scene where I was like, oh, the movie's starting, because I remembered that from this point on, the rest of the plot actually happens.
Well, and honestly, like once
this happens like an hour and 20 minutes into the movie.
Yes,
essentially nothing has happened.
And honestly, like real talk, I was very frustrated in the movie, like leading up to her meeting the family.
This movie's a disaster.
Yeah. But once she meets the vampire family and they start like hanging out, I was like engaged. I'm like, this is very silly, but it's like comforting and I'll watch it.
The only thing I had trouble with there is that even after that scene, you have to like sit through another Edward carrying Bella through the forest for like 10 minutes music video.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like talking to each other in the tree, but you don't get to hear what they're saying.
Right.
And I was like, God, we never get to hear what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They have a 2-sentence exchange about Debussy. And I was like, are we supposed to believe they have anything in common based on this? She sees that he's listening to classical music.
Also, I watched that scene and you can edit that to make it very silly because I was like, if somebody hasn't done it already, somebody should, because she goes right over to Circuit Play and she's like, let's see what you're listening to. And then she plays it and then they both like stop and listen to it for a little bit.
Like, and y'all ready for this? You
can do something. Guys, somebody out there needs to do something very silly with that one scene. Right. Well, I think like not enough like assholes have watched it, except I was like the first. Yeah. Maybe.
That you were like, you wanted it to
You could edit that scene to be very silly.
But it's Claire de Lune. It's just fucking straightforward.
And they like slow dance. She's like, I can't dance because she's supposed to be clumsy.
But he's like impressed that she recognizes Claire de Lune.
Yeah.
That scene, it's like the only time they actually talk to each other about something that they have in common. That's literally the only scene where that happens.
No, it's all those other times when we can't hear them talking.
I like keep harping on that, but like there's literally no dynamic that a 17-year-old girl could have with a guy from another century.
Yeah.
There's no
He's
way.
like, oh, you can vote.
Yeah, like, I guess, I hope he's progressive. Like,
right.
We don't even know.
We're supposed to believe, well, there's all this emphasis, especially in later movies, he's like a gentleman and he like knows how to treat women right, which is so disgusting and but absurd.
We don't see them talking ever, so we have no idea what his politics are. We don't know what Bella's politics are. We don't know.
I don't think she has any.
As far as we know now.
Blank slate Bella.
Like, she...
Well, and I mean, Bella's, like, you could argue Bella is deliberately
a blank slate.
Because you're supposed to, she's like a self-insertion fantasy. You're supposed to insert yourself into the character of Bella and be romanced by Edward.
Yeah, because she's just a beautiful cardboard cutout. I mean, that's all intentional. And I don't think anybody, I mean, that's not a new argument. Like, everybody knows that's the purpose that Bella serves as, part of why she makes no actual choices.
But it means
she's like a video game character. She's just like standing there.
She reacts.
Things happen and she's like, now I'm going to go to the next scene.
Right.
You know?
Well, and it makes just like the romance parts really boring.
It does.
When you're an adult. Because like,
oh god, yeah,
because the whole like romance and flirtation and attraction is really interesting. It's real, like, people kind of navigating like meeting each other and expressing affection for one another. Like, all that stuff is like awkward and interesting and fun and shit like that.
Yeah, totally. I just realized I was trying to talk about vampire baseball and we fell down a rabbit hole. That's my fault.
What I mean. It's like vampire baseball.
It's exactly
Love is like vampire baseball.
I was just like, how did I get back to complaining about Edward again? I'm so sorry.
They play vampire baseball.
They do.
But they have to wait.
I want to say I liked this scene.
Yeah, I was.
This was the part of the movie where I was like, oh, the movie's gonna get fun now. Yeah. I don't know that it does, but I love this scene.
They dove in on this scene, and I like
this scene's fun in the book, but it's actually more fun to watch because it's so silly.
And the actors are like they're into it.
I loved it.
They like commit. The whole vampire family's like, we're gonna be vampire.
And it's like a fun like X-Men kind of a moment where you're like watching characters who have superpowers play like playing a game together. It's like it's like a training montage scene, but it's like, okay, so how would vampires blow off steam? They have infinite time. Wouldn't it be funny if they played sports? But they're so incredibly good at physical activity that when they throw a baseball,
it sounds like thunder.
Yeah, when they hit a baseball with a bat, it sounds like a thunderclap, so they have to wait until a thunderstorm to play.
That's cute.
It is cute, and it's also like they're throwing the ball. It goes like so fast and so far, and then you watch Edward like running really fast after. It's like the Flash or whatever. Like it's fun to watch those kinds of effects.
It's a cute little thing.
I like enjoyed the whole scene. Yeah, and I was like, this scene has a sense of fun.
Yeah, there's cute character dynamics. Like the angry sister got pissed at Bella because she was called out. Yeah, and then like she was like,
Bella's the umpire. It like establishes a dynamic with all the different characters that I liked. Like, these are the things about the movie that I thought were good. Right. There are some
more
interesting
of this,
things.
less staring.
Yeah, but gosh, there's so little that actually happens in this movie. And
I know.
This is
which is a huge issue with Twilight in general.
I know, because it's like, what are you going to do? Invent something? Nothing happens in the book.
I would totally, if somebody was like, you need to direct Twilight 3 or whatever, I would just
fucking go off the deep end.
I'd be like, listen, buckle up.
You wouldn't be able to get away with it though, because
well, this is why I'm not.
Stephenie Meyer would be there being like, "That's not what happens in my book."
I'd be like, Stephanie,
step
you'll
off.
Get your little salad cameo. Which she gets.
She
gets a cameo
in this.
where she's you'll get your fucking
Okay, I
cameo.
not to circle back yet again, but I also thought it was crazy that everyone in the diner was falling all over Bella. Like, the woman who runs the diner and also the guy who played Santa Claus were like obsessed with
Santa.
her.
What was it? Butt
They
crack?
were like, "Do you remember me?" And
I'm butt crack Santa. I'm like, that sounds inappropriate.
It was.
Yeah.
I was like, is this older man hating on her?
Yeah.
But it was also like, why is everyone so fucking into this girl?
Yeah.
It was
Well,
like,
it
she's
wasn't
the
like
chosen one.
Right.
Like,
It wasn't like a
protect
sexy way.
the gem. Like, I was like,
It wasn't just like, we love Bella. Bella is here. Everyone freak the fuck out.
It was kind of like on that level though. Where
and it almost exhausts you throughout the movie. You're like, Jesus.
Yeah, there's no character.
It's
other
a little
than Rosalie, who's like, why do we care about this?
Maybe
guy?
that's why I like Rosalie. I'm
you
like, at
like
least
her?
you show some
Because
difference.
Rosalie's Edward's sister, and she's the only character who's like, why are we bothering with this?
Why am I risking our safety for this
to take
fucking
care of this
idiot?
human?
Yeah.
And then Dr. Cullen is like, well, Edward's never had a crush on anybody before, so we need to be supportive.
It's kind of sad. We're sick of it, and so we gotta.
And like, honestly, we were worried he'd never find anybody, but like, he's finally taken home a girl. We're gonna go with it. It's weird. But,
she's a human.
Yeah,
but
she's
it's
a
all right.
human.
We're shown, so like the foster dad, he's the one who like converted all the vamps.
Who is that actor? He looks so
Peter
familiar. I feel like he's probably in something else
like that.
I've seen.
I don't know why I know his name off the top of my head.
Everybody looks creepy, but they're supposed to. They're vampires.
Because they load on the pale
the
makeup.
foundation.
Yeah.
Everybody's a clown.
And they make him wear contacts. And so I think that's part of the reason why half the movie, like, Robert Pattinson is kind of like wincing. Because I think
his face is heavy.
No,
he can't emote. Oh, I see what you mean.
I recall reading an interview. It was they hurt, like they were painful because they were like colored contacts.
Yeah.
So those hurt.
Well, he needs to look like he's in pain for the entire movie.
That's true. So maybe that was part of it. But so like the whole narrative is that this dad, like, he's not literally their dad. Like he converts
their vampire
them.
dad.
Their vamp dad. He converts them.
The patriarch
But,
of the
like,
Cullen family.
Why would he
do that?
Do it to Edward? Like I get why he would
Edward
do it to his
was
wife.
dying and he wanted to save Edward's
But
life.
he's essentially a doctor. I imagine he's seen lots of people die.
Yeah, I know.
Especially
I wondered
this is
about
supposed
that
to be
too.
the Spanish flu. Mm-hmm. I'm like, are they lovers? Because the whole like scene, he was like licking his neck and stuff.
I don't think it's like super
I
well
know
explained
they're not,
in the book either.
They're not canon lovers,
No,
but it
they're
was very
not.
lover-esque.
It is, and it's,
Why Edward? They don't really explain that. He was just like, I was dying. I'm like, well,
know.
people do die.
Yeah.
I'm sure this guy's supposedly a doctor. I'm sure he's seen a lot of people die. Why Edward? That's never explained.
I don't think it's explained in the book, or if it is, I don't remember it, which isn't a good sign.
It's probably not.
I feel like it's probably not explained. And
Maybe
it's
they're
like,
friends. I don't know.
why would like doesn't Dr. Cullen think it's kind of unethical to turn people into
Right,
vampires?
because-
and like that is something that's sort of approached at the end of the movie, because
Edward
the
talks
big
about that.
twist at the end is, so Bella gets kidnapped by this bad vampire who shows up at the baseball game.
With his bros.
None of this is even important, but the plot finally starts because a bad guy shows up and he's like, this alluring human has the most alluring scent ever.
And he sees Edward being protective of her.
Yes.
And he's like, this is the best hunt ever.
And so it becomes a very sexually charged,
Right.
like rapist thing where it's like, he's like, I have to capture this human and eat her. But
Right.
it's like very sexual.
Right.
So he tricks Bella into leaving the vampires behind and going to this studio.
Ballet studio. Where she used to do ballet as a child.
And like pretends that her mother is there and
But
she's not really there
yeah.
and blah, blah, blah.
So that's why Bella's like, I'm willing to risk my life for my mama.
Yeah, and like she's really mean to her dad. None of that
Oh
made
my God.
sense.
And that scene was like
a lot of
sincerely
this
upsetting.
Stuff, a lot of this movie, I was like, this does not make sense. And
No.
it like bothered me.
Yeah.
Which I guess would have bothered me the first time I saw this movie too.
Yeah.
But like,
that
it
scene was
still
also genuinely
sucks.
upsetting.
Like, these are serious plot
She was
problems.
so mean to her dad,
So
you
like,
guys.
she has to escape her home in order to hide out somewhere to get away from this vampire guy. So she has to like lie to her dad and be like, I have to leave for a few days, which no dad would ever let their daughter do that.
Right.
So she has to lie to him.
So she pretends she's in a fight with Edward. She's like, I never
That
want to see you
doesn't
again.
make
Doesn't make
sense
sense.
either.
Slams the door on him and is like, I can't stand him anymore. I'm breaking up with him. And then starts packing and saying she needs to get out of town, move back in
And
with
saying
her mom.
she's going to move with her mom again. And then I guess because she wants to make sure her dad doesn't follow her.
Yeah.
She
Is
says a
super
bunch of
mean.
shitty stuff to her dad and is like,
I don't want to get stuck here like mom did.
yeah.
And like, oh, what am I going to do? Sit
Which
around and
is-
watch baseball with you
Yeah,
and go to
which
this
is, like,
stupid
fucked
diner?
up because her dad is like a saint for the entire
He's
movie.
like a really nice, he's just trying to like connect with her. He's awkward, but like he
I
means
feel
well.
like he's like the
he gives
greatest.
her a car.
I was like, he's like a great dad.
And the actor does a good job, and so you actually feel really sad during the scene because he looks really devastated.
It's tough, and I feel like in the book it's a little different because it's sort
Still
of
fucked
established
up.
that both of Bella's parents are, I would say,
Absent?
negligent.
Yeah.
like to a point
Which-
where it's a significant flaw, and then it kind of explains her behavior where she's like,
Right.
she needs a father figure in Edward, which is fucked up. But
yeah.
like, I think in the books it kind of makes a sad amount of sense. Where it's like, oh, she sees this sort of perfect family in the Cullens and gravitates towards it because things aren't stable at home, and her dad, she has like no relationship with him in the books, and there's like no connection.
But
there.
it's not.
But
the way
in the movie,
he's like nice, and he takes her out to dinner, and
like
stuff.
the fact that they are supposedly don't have a connection doesn't really make sense in the movies because the actors seem to have a pretty good chemistry.
Yeah.
So it like doesn't
Like
really
the dad
work.
seems awkward.
Yeah.
And like doesn't really know how to convey he cares about Bella, but like clearly does.
Yeah.
So it's weird.
None of it makes sense.
Anyway, she's at the ballet studio. She's kidnapped by the guy.
Yeah.
And the guy, he's filming her to show to Edward.
This is so fucked up.
And so it's like he's like getting up in her space, and it's
But I
clearly
mean, it's like good movie stuff to do.
right.
Like, this is
but
like
it's
good
clearly
pacing
like a
stuff.
non-consensual like violation of Bella's
Yes,
like body.
and it feels very like snuff film-esque.
Yeah.
It's like he's making this movie for Edward of how he's going to kill her.
right. He breaks her
Or-
leg on camera.
Yes, he
and
breaks
she's
her leg.
screaming.
He's like slowly torturing her before he kills her.
It's pretty heavy shit for like PG-13.
Yeah, and like again, I said earlier, I feel like this scene is framed as like kind of a rape scene. It's not literally a rape, but it's shot as though Bella's being like almost sexually compromised.
Well, especially the bite. Like him, like he, like grabbing her arm and biting her. Like we understand that doing this turns her into a vampire. So she's being like non-consensually
but
turned
he's
into a
like very turned on by everything he's doing. The predator vampire guy is like into everything he's doing to her.
Right. And she's like scared and doesn't want this to happen.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's supposed to be the difference between like Edward eventually
cares about her choices,
right,
supposedly,
right,
and blah blah blah.
And so the big thing is like Edward now he arrives with his family.
It's not explained how they find out where she is.
Yeah, whatever.
They magically find her.
I think like he just knew. I don't know.
Maybe he reads the bad guy's mind.
Yeah.
Well,
and
also she tells Alice none of this matters. It's not explained, and it doesn't matter. Edward saves the day.
Yeah.
They kill the bad guy.
Well, the way Edward has to save the day, he has to his. I don't know why doctor guy couldn't do it, but he's like, Edward, you have to listen. You have to go suck the bad vampire venom out of Bella.
Because if he doesn't, she'll turn into a vampire.
Right, but then you have to stop. Yeah, after you get the venom out, you have to stop sucking your blood, even though it's like the most delicious, amazing blood in the world. You have to prevent yourself. So obviously, it's like sexual.
Yeah,
like you have to hold back.
You just have to put the tip in for like a second, and then it's like what this fucking scene is. It's so weird.
It is really. Also, like his dad coaching him through it is really.
Like,
one thing I thought was cool about this scene is like in the background they're killing the guy.
Like Alice or whatever her name is, like kills the dude.
Well, I was like, oh, it's kind of sucks that like just the brothers are the one because they're like.
But then they're like, Alice, get over here.
Yeah, and Alice fucking climbs him in his body and rips his head off.
Yeah,
I was like, that's kind of cool.
I'll say this for the Twilight franchise: the female vampires are really fucking strong.
Yeah,
it's like part of it.
I think they have the coolest powers too.
They do.
Personally,
they get really cool
I
powers.
don't even remember what the other one's powers are.
Me either. I don't even think they all get powers.
They all do.
What's like Emmett and Rosalie's
Emmett,
power?
I think, is like super strong.
Okay.
They like cover them in the last
in the books,
movie.
You're right. I just don't remember or care.
But they don't. But then all of a sudden, Alice's boyfriend gets a Southern accent in the last movie because he's supposed to be a Confederate soldier or something.
What?
It's so silly, and it's like, hey Bella, like we've already heard him talk for 4 movies. Like he didn't sound like this ever.
That might be in the book, and I've repressed it.
They go into their backstories a little bit and stuff like that.
That's
Anyway,
crazy.
that's in the last
is
movie. I remember that. I'm suddenly having a really bad Southern accent. Anyway, but Edward also like. And then, so Edward's doing the thing where he's sucking out the venom, and then he's like, okay. The doctor dad's like, okay, the venom's out.
Okay,
Edward,
son.
Edward, you need to stop. Edward, stop. I'm like, why don't you just smack him? You're right there. Just hit him in the head or so, like, cut it out.
This scene was crazy.
He's like, no, Edward, please. Edward, stop it. Edward.
None of this is in here. We're improvising. and then it fades away and you're like, oh no, did Bella die?
Yeah.
But of course she fucking didn't. She's in a hospital bed. And
oh my God, this scene is so fucking problematic.
The worst scene in the movie, I would argue.
Okay, guys. Your daughter has had a fight with her boyfriend. Last you've seen of her daughter is her freaking out and acting erratically. Yes. Her slamming the door at her boyfriend, yelling at him and saying, I never want to see you. Mm-hmm. And like packing up and leaving. And then shows up
in the hospital because she fell down the stairs.
Yeah, with a broken leg and a artery like thing because she had a piece of the mirror in her.
And her wrist is completely destroyed.
Right. And they buy the story that Edward and his dad went to go find her to make sure she was okay.
Which is crazy.
And she just fell down the stairs.
She fell down the stairs,
and the parents are like, that sounds right.
Well, and then when Bella desperately is like, Mom, I do want to stay in Forks and I want to be with Edward.
Yeah.
Her parents are like, okay. This is, again, why I feel like her parents are just straight up negligent. Yeah. And the story makes more sense if you just take it that way because there's no other explanation for their behavior throughout all of this. They also
let Edward hang out in the hospital room before Bella wakes up and tells her side of the story.
He's not next of kin. They're not married.
Yeah, that's a problem.
They've barely been dating.
And he could be abusive.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Although her dad isn't there. And her dad is at least established in this movie to be
suspicious of Edward.
But
he never really
gets over that really quick in the books. He's just kind of like...
He doesn't get over it in the movies. He's always like, I don't like that Edward.
In the books, he's just kind of like, I guess if you're happy.
Oh, okay.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
All of it is weird because it's like child marriage. I mean, there's a lot of fucking weird shit that her parents just go with.
Yeah. And then they go to prom.
Yeah. At the end,
she has a cast on. And so it's like she's already clumsy, so she's like, I can't dance.
Did you like how? Oh my God, Edward is an old man.
Yeah.
And like in this scene, they walk into prom.
Yeah.
And she's like, why did I have to go to prom? I'm like different and don't want to go to prom. That's my character.
Right.
And he's like, I just really want to make sure that you have all the experiences that
Which
you
is
should
like a dad thing to say.
And it's like a weird like grandpa thing to say. I was like, Edward's like a weird old man, and he is an old man according to like reality.
It's gross.
And she's like, fine.
Yeah.
And like then they interact with her friends for I want to say 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, do you want to leave? And she's like, yeah. And they do. And I was like,
they go to the gazebo.
Did they really go all the way to the prom?
To go dance alone?
For her to have a formative experience that Edward is making her have. That apparently he was fine with lasting like 30 seconds.
I guess.
Also, like Jacob showing up for like 2 seconds in a tie.
Suit. Yeah, a tie.
That was hilarious.
Suit. Yeah, was he expecting to like?
I think so.
Sub in.
I think so. Yeah.
Christ.
Again, that's why I think that scene is a sign of things to come for Jacob because it's like, why is he all dressed up? Was he kind of sort of fantasizing that maybe she'd be like,
and she makes a note like, why are you dressed up?
And he's like, no reason.
Anyway,
I'm just wearing a tie. Do you like it?
I love the shot of him just emerging from the woods too.
He's a wolf.
Because I thought he was already a werewolf because of that.
No, it's just.
But he's not. It's just like his
symbols.
aesthetic. Yeah,
his aesthetic is walking through the woods in a tie.
It's really silly. Hey Bella. Also, like, side note, all the teenage girls that like Bella is supposed to be like cooler than or something are way more like engaging and nuanced.
I know.
Like Anna Kendrick, who actually went on to become like an established actress, and we all love her.
And this was like one of her first roles.
This was before she was like
she was in this and Scott Pilgrim like really early on, and then became super famous after.
She has like just a few bit scenes, and like she seems like I'm like, why aren't the dudes like she seems way more interesting. We're supposed to
believe that these like two beautiful girls who Bella is friends with early on are supposedly not as interesting to all these teenage boys as Bella. Bella like kind of is no one.
Like Kristen Stewart is pretty, but Bella's attitude is just like, I don't like this. I don't care. I want to. I'm the suffer in silence type. That's what she says. I'm like, okay. Like dudes aren't into that.
I don't think so.
Unless you're like super emo.
I mean, I actually feel like there's nothing she does that anyone would be into in this movie. And
so
again, that's the fantasy.
Right.
Is that
you don't have to do anything to be
loved.
Has
no personality.
Yeah.
She doesn't say anything. And
Right.
like when her friends are like, let's go surfing, let's go do activities, let's try on prom dresses.
Like goes around like
she
reluctantly.
does nothing.
And makes a face the whole time.
Sits there the whole time.
Yeah.
And like when they go surfing and Jacob shows up and like goes and sits next to her, it's like, why would he be interested in sitting next to her? There's
She's
nothing
so
appealing
boring.
about her.
Yeah. So
why?
that's the part
you
that's
have to believe she has supernatural powers.
yeah,
or there's no
for it to make
explanation.
any sense.
Yep.
And that's the thing that's a shame for like teenage. Oh my goodness, it's a shame for like teenage girls to see. Is like you don't have to be this like passive, apathetic, sad girl.
It's also like great. You just have to be really beautiful. And
yeah,
it's not great because it's unachievable. Like
right.
the average person looks nothing like Kristen Stewart, and that's fine.
And like has interests outside of men,
which is like good.
Yeah,
and also like the way that you might meet a good life partner is through interests,
right? Like
through mutual interests.
Could you name a single interest that Bella has?
No.
Yeah,
Debussy, Edward.
Yeah.
Edward and Debussy's records.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, listening
Claire
to them.
de Lune on loop.
Yeah.
That's it for
That's
her.
it.
Those are her interests.
Fascinating woman.
She has no interests.
Yeah. And then the movie ends with, well, because they killed the bad guy, the movie ends with his vampire girlfriend looking at them
Victoria
out the window and being
There's
like,
always like bad vampires.
I'm gonna fuck 'em up.
It doesn't matter though.
Yeah.
That stuff is never important.
Also, I think it's really funny that the outro music is Radiohead.
It is funny.
Because Radiohead is supposed to be like, cool dudes listen to Radiohead.
I thought this was interesting too, that like the entire end credits were like in black and white.
And were like
structured.
interesting.
Yeah, we're like structured
Yeah.
almost like an indie film where it was
Yeah.
like almost not outtakes, but like casual shots of like Edward and Bella hanging out.
Yeah.
It was very like
weird.
2008 like cool teen movie vibe.
Yeah.
And like I remember like the soundtracks
Which
for all
is
the
really-
Twilight movies have consistently been really great. Like a lot of
Right.
times they get like indie bands that are fantastic.
Tom
to, like,
York did a song for the last movie. I
Yeah.
don't know how they managed that.
Money?
But yeah, that's
I'm
probably
gonna
it.
guess money. Or Eternal Vampire stuff.
I mean, Tom York does look like a vampire.
I'm just saying, like they have
Very
ways.
pale.
Rob Pattinson gave him a little bite on the neck.
I'd watch that movie.
Chance in the Sack
Robert
with Edward.
Pattinson converts Tom York to
I don't know where I'm going with
vampirism.
this.
I watch it.
So like, I guess we gotta wrap it up. What the
yeah.
fuck is this movie?
I wouldn't recommend it.
I wouldn't either, but I feel like I almost would recommend it in the sense that it's such an important piece of
which is crazy.
historical. It's fucking crazy that that's the case, but it actually is true.
Like,
this movie influenced
was
and
a
Harry
massive
Potter
cultural-
influenced fan fiction communities, influenced.
Oh, we're gonna talk about fan
we
fiction
are
next
because
time.
the next movie we're gonna do is 50 Shades of Grey,
Which, for people who don't know, is a fan fiction
of Twilight, and like is directly influenced by Twilight.
Which I feel like they try to keep on the DL. Like the people
Everyone knows though. Everyone knows that. And like the fan fiction communities that sprung up around Twilight and like sort of
they
the
were
idea
intense.
of women writing these stories that are about
Which existed
potentially
before Twilight.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But like I think Twilight sort of brought it into the public eye
or at
in a
least to a
different way.
new generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it was like, what if we have these romances that do still involve some sort of classic romance stuff where the guy is more powerful, the guy's pursuing you.
Right.
There's all these sort of classic fantasy things, but the new aspect is that Bella's sexuality is a big part of it, and like I don't agree with the portrayal of it here, but like the fact that she's a sexual being that's a core part of the story, and I feel like that's why fan fiction writers, especially women fan fiction writers, gravitated towards it, because they were like, I want to write stories about how I want to fuck Edward, and like that's like canonically possible within this world. I can like endlessly write a story about wanting to have sex and it's like approved of.
Because that's basically
like
the original
Harry
text.
Potter, which like Harry Potter, like obviously has a huge fanfic community, but there's no sex in those books.
No, there's like implied like,
but it's like
sexual attraction, but it's like
conservatively
right.
written.
It's like it cuts away when they're making out or something.
And like there were books that I read like as
fine.
like a counter example of like a book that I read as a kid that I really liked. That like is about teens falling in love was the Alana books by Tamara Pierce, which are like medieval fantasy shit, and like There's some sex scenes in those, but it's definitely not as horny as Twilight. But like, it's about magic. It's about like medieval fantasy.
I remember reading some Tamara Pierce, but I can't remember which ones I read.
And
it was
like
a while ago.
those books revolve a lot more around consent than Twilight does.
It's good something does.
But they didn't catch on. Like Twilight was the book that really caught on.
You know.
But I mean, I think that's because it exists within safe gender roles. Like it's not
right.
It's already saying that it's okay for guys to make all the decisions in a relationship. So it's like a little unsafe, but like not really. I mean,
no, I hear you. Well,
but Edward is a lesbian though, right?
Edward's a total lesbian. And I think the evidence will show we're correct.
Do you have evidence for this reading?
No, I just like yelling that.
Okay. I mean, I think it would be cool if the story were in any way different in terms of its portrayal of gender.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's very by the books in terms of like,
oh my goodness,
men are uncontrollable beasts, whether they're vampires or werewolves.
Right. Whether they're cold or warm. Because Jacob's like really warm.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Stupid. And like women have to
figure out how to either control.
Well, the whole thing is like literally the most important moment in Bella's life wraps around the wedding. Yes. Like her marrying Edward is her becoming a vampire
and losing her virginity.
Yeah.
All of those things are the same thing.
Which is
it's all the most important
retrograde.
Coming of age possible thing.
Right.
Or all those things.
But I mean, it's kind of cool that at the same time she gets to be like a super being. You know, she's not
that stuff is later, and it's also like, I don't know. I mean, it kind of plays into sort of the Mormon idea about like eternal life and like living. Yeah,
Stephanie Meyer, the author, is a Mormon.
With your partner forever is like sort of afterlife.
Yeah,
and like monogamy is the most important thing. And
family,
and like only staying with one person eternally because they're going to be with you forever.
Right,
like all that stuff.
You're in the Mormon religion. You're not only married in life,
you're
married in the afterlife.
Heaven. Yeah.
So it's like an eternal commitment.
Yeah. And like that's a huge part of these books. And like even the werewolf stuff is still eternal.
Yeah. And it's the werewolf stuff
later,
is like there is like a soul pairing.
Oh my God.
And sometimes it's with a baby.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Sometimes it turns out you have to marry
You have to fall in love with a baby.
People probably don't know what we're talking about.
Guys, Jacob falls in love with Bella's baby.
And everybody tries to say that it's not falling in love, but it is.
Oh, it's totally. I mean, it's like child grooming.
Yeah.
Is what the werewolves do.
It's fine though.
It's totally fine, guys. It's so
magic,
okay.
And it's like fun.
So I will say,
and it's like devotion. Like, oh my God, we're getting so off track.
In conclusion, there's a lot about these movies/books that are problematic, but
they were like huge.
They were a huge cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I think it's valid to look at them and look at maybe the stuff that might evolve from them or might have already evolved from them. Like, you're going to have a whole generation of teenage girls who grew up on this shit.
Oh, yeah.
And that's going to influence cultural taste for like years to come. And so I think... And it's already influenced the spinoff that apparently captured the imaginations of housewives everywhere. So,
and I mean, I think Twilight did too. Like, I think there were a lot of older women
or whatever, which I find like, I'm sorry, I kind of judge that.
I feel the opposite way, where I'm like really sad for them. Either way, it's a negative emotion,
right?
And I'm like,
what?
Like,
I feel like your marriage is something's wrong there.
Yep.
For you to be like, I want to just dive into this fantasy of this teenage vampire boy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Like, I'm all for like watch whatever porn you're into. Like, that's cool. Yeah. But like, I just feel bad for anybody who
finds that romantic and alluring and satisfying.
Yeah.
Like, or
like anybody who like is in a loveless marriage, more like, where I'm just like, oh, you're like you really need erotica in order to like continue, because this is it for you. Yeah. This is like the only thing you have.
And so 50 Shades, I feel like, is an extension of that.
Oh, for sure. And it's much more explicit than Twilight. I mean,
from what I hear,
the characters are older.
Yeah.
And so on.
50 Shades, I've read a recap of it.
We both have read the same recap. There's a very famous lengthy recap.
It's so funny. It's
that's
very
fun
well
to
done.
read. The actual book is tough to read.
I haven't read I heard it's very poorly written.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fan fiction.
I mean, I read all of Twilight, so clearly I'm capable of getting through some like inarticulately written characters that have no defining traits.
Right.
So I'm willing to do it. But like I read Twilight back when I was like doing mostly data entry for the Phoenix and like some writing. So I had a lot of like time to kill.
Yeah.
And like as my job has gotten more and more writing focused over the years, I don't listen to audiobooks constantly, but I did listen to all of Twilight on audiobook.
Wow.
I recommend that experience if anybody out there has a data entry job and you want to like laugh at something.
Who did the voice? Was anybody significant?
No, it was just some lady.
Poor lady.
They probably got other people recording it by now. I mean, I was reading it like back in the day.
Right.
So
when it was like just getting big.
Yeah. I was really on the forefront of
you
Twilight.
Like Twilight before Twilight was
fandom.
Cool.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with this.
Anyway, guys, so next week we will see you for our coverage of 50 Shades.
Yeah.
I'm excited. It sounds like a terrible movie, honestly.
It's gonna be bad. I mean, I know we're like saying these things are bad, but like
I'll go in harder on 50 Shades, I think.
I mean, we went in pretty fucking hard on Twilight, but like
I was still gentle though.
Yeah.
I feel like I'll go harder on 50 Shades.
All right. We both will. I mean, I don't like either of these things, but just right before we close out, just ever so briefly circle back to like the Buffy comparison. Like, I just want to say, like, a lot of times I hear guys saying that about these kinds of books, and like, I would caution our listeners against those comparisons because like, Buffy isn't necessarily a better role model for girls than Bella. Like Bella isn't necessarily a bad role model either. Like things happen to her. She's not really a person, but like that's not really the problem with these books.
Also, I totally had
the problem isn't women.
Yeah, I totally had like Bella moments where I'm just like self-pitying and like you don't have to be like a perfect superwoman. You can be kind of boring and shitty sometimes.
Yeah, and you can just like sit at lunch and be like, I hate all these people. That's pretty relatable. And
be like,
to me.
But like everyone's obsessed with me.
Yeah, that's me every day.
Yeah, totally.
But it's like the problems that I have with this book are like the symptoms that gave rise to it. You know, like the societal problems where like, oh, gender roles are fucked up.
Right.
Like,
I don't blame teenage girls for that.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get at.
This is the world they're like living in, and so I think it's okay if they find stuff to enjoy within that.
Yeah, and like
whatever.
Even Buffy is like not an achievable fantasy. Like she has superpowers.
Right.
Like I don't.
What a bar to set for women, and like her Angel, her relationship with Angel's fucked
and Spike
up.
And stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, like the reason why those stories are interesting is because those characters are flawed.
Yeah.
So like I guess I would just say like if you're planning on throwing Twilight completely under the bus, like I don't want our listeners to do that because the problems that we have with it aren't just that it's like, oh, it's poorly written, blah blah. Like it is, but like that's really not my issue. It's more like, you know, question the gender stuff. Question the idea that like this is how sexual relationships should be.
Right.
And that Edward should be like hanging out in Bella's room before they're even dating and like watching her while she sleeps.
I thought that was appropriate.
I didn't.
What? You've never like started dating a guy and then you wake up and he's staring at you from across the room, and then you go to turn on a light and then he's disappeared.
Like jokes aside, that's like a nightmare that I have.
Guys,
I definitely have real fears about people breaking into my apartment.
Oh, I think you've talked to me about that.
Yeah, that's like a common fear for me.
Do we have an advice corner where I'm like, guys, if you're like wooing a girl, don't break into her room and stare at her. Corner. Why is it all my stuff? You need your own stuff.
I don't want to be involved in this show. By the way, I'm quitting the show.
Oh wow, 3 apps.
3 apps.
So I have to watch 50 Days alone and talk about it to no one. Great.
I think that a dating advice theme, we can definitely do that for the next ep because there's gonna be a lot to say.
I feel like too, eventually we should watch some kind of either romantic comedy or something.
After I trashed The Notebook earlier while we were eating dinner.
So I feel like
guys, I trashed The Notebook for like 30 minutes.
We should watch one that we like.
Oh, that would be hard for me to find.
Oh, there's a bunch of like romantic comedies.
Maybe like Eternal Sunshine. Oh, that's not really.
And like, guys, I read fanfic. Okay, like there's stuff out there I know is like self-indulgent, but also fun and well done.
Yeah.
So it's possible. It's like how we trash male directors, but there are male directors out there doing a good job depicting women.
Oh, for sure. And like there are great fan fictions out there of Twilight. It's part of why people were mad that 50 Shades got so popular.
Yeah, we
can get to that in that episode.
Yeah, because I was reading fan fiction at the time, not of Twilight.
In general.
And I, in my mind, I was like, eventually this shit's gonna go mainstream. It's a movie or a show or something, because a lot of it's really good content. And then the one that did, it's like this absurd. What was the original title of it? We'll research that for it. It's really silly from what I remember.
I didn't remember that it had an original title, but I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
I can't wait to find out what that is.
All right, guys.
But yeah, so I sometimes really mundane shit that's really simplistic gets popular. And like Twilight is an example of that, I think.
And that's okay.
That's fine.
We forgive you.
Transformers is also popular.
Fuck Transformers.
Yeah.
Fuck Michael Bay.
If you're really mad at Twilight, but you're like cool with Transformers, get the fuck out.
Yeah, don't listen to this podcast.
You already listened to all of it.
Oh, fuck.
So anyway, we forgot to say our Twitter handles last time, so I had to like add it in later, but let's say them this time.
I'm at Mary Ellen Murr, MURR.
And I'm Mitty Myers on Twitter, and we have an email address now. So if people want to send us email,
shit.
I added this in too.
Guys, send us fan art.
Send us fan art of I don't know
us
or
as
like
Edward
let
and
us
Bella.
know like what movie pairings you'd like us to do.
No, only fan art.
Or single movies, and then we'll find a pairing for it.
Yeah.
We already have a big list of stuff we want to do, but
and like if we don't like your shit, I'm
we'll
not gonna
fucking
watch
ignore
it.
your email.
Yeah.
No,
I
I'm
mean,
just kidding.
maybe we'll be like, thanks, but
maybe.
I'm not gonna watch a movie where I'm
I'll
like,
cut all this out. I'm being such a dick.
Let's be
maybe
dicks.
we'll respond. Maybe we won't. I don't know.
Who cares? Whatever.
We'll respond. I'll respond. I haven't even said what the email is yet. Okay, so it's let's watch 2 movies at Gmail, spelled out the 2 TWO.
Cool.
Let's watch 2 movies.
People like it if you're. It's like an Edward thing. You kind of have to be uninterested and then interested in them. That's what the relationship we want with our fans.
When people send
oh my god,
show
it's so
email.
annoying when we get like hundreds of listens.
It makes me want to barf when I think about people listening to our show and sharing it on social media.
When I think of getting like famous from this show because of how
and,
good
like,
it is.
Meeting Robert Pattinson and interviewing him
Maddie,
and like becoming
Maddie,
his friend.
Maddie, you're not supposed to say that's the goal of this show. You're not supposed to. He might be listening. Maddie, you blew up my spot.
I'm
Jesus.
really sorry.
Anyways, guys. Thank you so much for listening to our third episode. Until next time, we'll be watching 2 movies.
Is that still what we said?
Oh, it's still our
we've
sign off.
said it 3 times.
It has to be. Bye, Robert.
Follow us at atomicblueproductions.com or support us at patreon.com/atomicblueproductions.